Everyone, welcome to tonight's webinar. My name's Ryan Henry, and I'm a former professional tennis player and managing director of Voyager. It's great to see everyone here on the call, and what hopes to be a really insightful webinar tonight. So, just before we begin, if you guys could just make sure you do stay on mute throughout, like we've just got there. So yeah, if you could just make sure you just stay on mute, that would be fantastic. We are going to open it up for questions towards the end here. So after about 30 minutes. So if there's any questions that sort of come up that you'd like to ask Margaret, then feel free to ask them. So just a little bit of a background on our special guest, Margaret Court. She holds the record for the most number of Grand Slams singles titles in history. So with 24, including 11 Australian Opens, 5 French Opens, 3 Wimbledon, and 5 US Opens, which is tied with Novak Djokovic as well on 24, and Serena Williams is on 23. So beyond that, Margaret's made a significant contribution to tennis in various ways as well, and just wanted to say welcome to the call, Margaret.
Thanks, Ryan. Nice to be speaking with you.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and it was great to meet you at the Australian Open a couple of weeks back, and I just thought it would be a really good opportunity for some of our players and parents to get to meet you on a call, potentially ask some questions, but learn about your fantastic history. So, I guess you won 24 Grand Slam singles titles. What's actually fascinating on top of that, you actually won another 40 Grand Slam titles in mixed and women's doubles as well, which is incredible. So 64 in total. So looking back on your career, what do you think set yourself apart from your competitors?
Probably, I would think my fitness. I was very skinny, very scrawny young girl, country girl, only lived in a population of 15,000 people, but lived across the road from 24 grass tennis courts. My first racket was a paling off the fence, and I used to go across there and hit on a wall, and somebody saw me hitting and gave me a big, heavy wooden racket. I could hardly get my fingers around it, but it was my pride and joy. But I started hitting up on the wall, and people started to see me and started to hit with me. And then my hometown was a very strong tennis center, because sort of a country area. And a lot of men used to play on those courts, and some of them had asked if I could have a hit with them. And so I used to watch them. They'd serve volley. And that's really how I learned to serve volley and be aggressive. And I found when I had to leave my hometown after I started to grow and win a few tournaments in juniors, I was very skinny, and they said, well, you're going to have to build yourself up if you're going to become a champion. I was a very good runner, but I went to weights, and back in those times, women didn't do weights. And so I used to get called the Aussie Amazon by the press, because I was in a men's gym early morning before the men went in, and I pumped weights and found myself developing, running the sand hills, I had a very good coach who was a boxing champion, had tremendous footwork, but was also a very good tennis player. And so I had really good people coaching me. So I learned a very much all-round game, but I feel my fitness was probably really my strength, particularly going to Europe and never having played on clay courts.
Yeah, gotcha. And I'm assuming that would have been like having a physical training regime would have been quite unusual back then. Like I know even some of the mainstream sports now, like it seems like the physical training side is people are only getting into it in the last, say, 10 or 20 years really seriously. Were you ahead of your time then in terms of like going into weight training and things like that?
Women didn't do that, and one of my coaches back then, which I was very fortunate, was Frank Sedgman, who was a great Australian player, Davis Cup player, won Wimbledon. He was still on tour with the professional circuit. He saw me, said she's skinny, she's scrawny. He owned a gym, and he used to do a lot of that, a lot of skipping, weights, circuit training. And I loved it. I was a bit like a thoroughbred. I enjoyed that side of it probably more than the tennis side of it, because at the age of 15, I had a choice of doing track or tennis. And so I chose tennis because it was a bit more sort of the ballerina, the drop shots, the artistic side. I found running track a little bit boring. So from a fitness side, and then I practiced with the guys. So I learned to serve volley. Harry Hopman used to me when I was 15, 16, and the Davis Cup players in Australia. There was Laver, Emerson, they all became my friends. He would invite me in to hit with the boys. So I knew I had to do what they were doing. And so that's where I think, I was a very aggressive serve volley, but I had a very good all-round game. But I loved to volley. They used to call me the arms. So I have very long arms. And I enjoyed that side of the game.
Yeah, nice. That's that's really, really interesting to hear on the physical training side, and that as well, because like to be able to play for as long, like I think I saw you played 47 Grand Slams, which works out to be about 12 years of Grand Slams. I know it was spread over more years than that, but to be able to be there, like they say, like one of the key things in order to become world class, like you need to be able to stay injury free for long periods of time. Did you experience that, like as a result of a lot of your gym training and physical training regime? Did you find yourself injury free for long periods, or did you have any setbacks in that
I
regard?
think my fitness training and my weight training kept me. I rarely had injury.
Yeah.
I did decide in 1965 to retire because back in those days was amateur days in that first part of my career.
Yeah.
I won, I think, 11 Grand Slams in the open era and 13 in the amateur era. So you sort of was away from home for 10 months of the year. I used to get homesick because you didn't have family that go with you. Your coaches couldn't go with you. You were either in a team or I had a manageress in those early years. And, I used to love my nation and I'd get homesick because the finances weren't there to go backwards and forwards then in those early years. So it was, I think, 1964, I decided I'd won everything a couple of times, 2 or 3 times. I decided to retire. So I said, I'm never picking up a tennis racket again. And I played squash, not realizing in those 2 years I was out and thought I'd never play again. I met my husband and got married. And then I just said to him, how about we go back 1 year and we were going to go farming. You see the life I've led. And I got back to number 2 in the world to Billie Jean King then. And so open tennis came in. And that was in 1990s. That was, no, sorry, 1967 and 68, around that. So we went for about 8 years. And it was in that time that open tennis came in. And so it was much, much easier for us then. The finances came in. It was easier to travel, easier to stay at nice hotels and eat better food and all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you had that gap there for a couple of years, and understand you also had a child and then won a Grand Slam after that as well, right? Which is
I won
how
a
was
Grand Slam after that. I think after having a child, I probably played some of my best tennis. I had a peak of fitness I never ever knew, and I won 24 out of 25 tournaments that year. The second year back after having a baby. Yeah.
Wow, that is impressive. I mean, anybody who has young children knows how much work they are. So you must have
I
been
had
able
a good husband. We didn't have a nanny either because you
Yeah,
didn't have the money to do that.
yeah,
And I had a husband that was there. We took the first one everywhere. Yeah, so he just went with us, fitted in like a glove. Yeah, and I think it took my eyes off myself. I had others that I had to look after, so I just go out and play the game, and I think I enjoyed it so much more.
yeah. That's interesting. Well, that feat hasn't been done many times before. I think it was Serena maybe, and I think there could have been one other. But yeah, really impressive effort, that one. So just I'm going to talk about the equipment and that soon. But just going back to your physical and then I'm going to talk about mental training. So like you had the reputation of being someone that was very mentally tough, handled the pressure super well. One of the like bits of research out there is that when you're pushing yourself really physically hard, you become mentally tough in the process. So people sort of say, "Oh, are you doing any mental training?" Well, if you're physically training, you're actually training yourself mentally as well to withstand pressure and all kinds of things. Did you like obviously now there's sports psychologists and like players have really good access to that. What sort of thing did you have any support in the mental side, or was it just your physical training that made you tough?
No, no, no mental side. It probably would have been nice if I had it, because coming from the background, I came from a family with nothing. They had no money, anything. And I was very blessed to have a coach in my hometown that took an interest.
Yeah.
He had a very good style, and I copied that a lot. It just particularly serve, volley, ground strokes. And he used to teach me, if I went out and played a tournament, he said, and I came off and I'd say, I won 6-4, 6-4. Thought he might say, well done. He said, it should have been 6-1, 6-1. And so my thing to go out there, yeah, I'd get nervous, and I really didn't believe in myself that much, but he did. He believed in me. And he said, you've done that, the training, you can do it. And so I used to talk to myself a lot and tell me myself I could do it, because we didn't have psychologists. We didn't have anybody helping us. And I think I just played my own game, and I got out there, and I was always determined. There was a determination in me that I wanted to be the best. And when I was 13 years of age, it was Frank Sedgman actually came through my hometown. The professionals used to come. It was a very good tennis centre, Albury. And he said actually to me, you could be the first Australian woman ever to win Wimbledon. So I had that goal. I had
Yeah.
something. People would say to me, what do you want to do? I'd say, I want to be the first Australian woman ever to win Wimbledon. And I mean, if you looked at me, I was skinny, scrawny. You think, how could this kid? I had hand-down clothes. My family parents couldn't afford it. I had a big old racket that you could hardly hang on to. And but I had this goal in there. And I always through my career had three goals. I wanted to be the first Australian to win Wimbledon. And then I wanted to win the Grand Slam. And then I wanted to be the first mum to be number one in the world. So I always had a goal. When I didn't have a goal, I could have stayed in tennis for the money, but my heart wasn't there anymore. And I loved the game. I loved playing for my nation. I love representing my nation. I loved that when I first won the first Wimbledon for Australia, we back in the amateur days didn't play for ourselves. We played for our nation. And when I won that, I thought, that's all over. What's next? And I just, I love the game. And I think today that's with young people is not your parents pushing you. My family really never saw me play. They didn't know anything really about tennis. I had two brothers that was cyclists, road cyclist and velodrome cyclist. And I had a sister, but she didn't play sport much at all. But I just loved it. And I think it's out of my love. And I was very much a tomboy back then. I could play cricket, football. I ran, I swam the river, and, I did things, and I enjoyed the outdoors. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, nice. And like I guess that drive that you had, goals that you set, and that's something that we always encourage our players to do is like if you've got particularly written goals that are measurable and that to go out there and achieve them. You won like a lot, like obviously 64 Grand Slam titles. You must have there's different athletes out there that maybe win a couple and then they get satisfied and then they stop. I mean, what was the driver for you to just continually like keep winning? Like you won said you won like once you won 20, was it at any point did you sort of say, hey, this is enough, or did you you just had a drive to just keep going?
I didn't know, Ryan, how many I won until I finished tennis. And it was, no, I shouldn't say that. It was when John Barrett and Open Tennis came in, and television became a whole lot bigger. They started to add up what I'd won. I never really counted it. I knew I'd won 11 Australians, and that was always important to me because I loved to go overseas as the #1 Australian player. And that was important to me. But I never counted them. I got out there. I didn't like to lose. I knew I put the training in. The hardest one always to win, I feel, was actually the French, because we never brought up on clay. You had to be the fittest. And my coach said to me, if you can hit the balls over 100 times in a row, you'll be able to beat those European girls. And if I got to 92 balls and I missed it, he made me start again. So there was things built into me from my coaches, and coaches back then didn't really do it for money. They did it. My coaches took nothing from me because they knew I had no money, and they did it because they saw something in me. And that's why I always honored them and respect them. And I thought I'm winning for them as well as for myself. And, because they sewed their life into me, hitting with me, practicing with me, the drills, the training. And so I thought, well, they believe in me. And so that helped me to believe in myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And just going on to like equipment around that time. So you mentioned that when you first started playing, you actually were using a piece of timber or something, but I'm assuming you progressed it to like a wooden racket. I'm assuming that it was wooden rackets when you first started playing, and then it was graphite at some point throughout your career.
I played it with aluminium.
Aluminium, okay.
Racket. Yeah, I won it with a camo that looked like a squash racket. I don't know how I ever did it. It used to crack because we changed when open tennis came. That was when the tiebreakers came in. So we pioneered those. And then we pioneered the metal rackets, and there was all kind, aluminium, graphite. They tried all kinds. And the aluminium one that I was playing with, so was Rod Laver, and they would crack. Nobody knew how to string them yet. I liked it. I got a lot of touch out of it. Rod Laver hated it. He finished up getting his old wooden racket and painting it gold because it was a gold racket. And he painted it gold and went out and used it. We laugh about that, but it had just a very tiny head. And I won the Grand Slam with it. And I just found I got a lot more power out of it, a lot more touch out of it. And I mean, the rackets today are beautiful. You get so much more power with them, than you did with the wooden racket.
Yeah, and like I've a lot of tennis clubs have a wooden racket still there, and I've used a wooden racket a few times just for a bit of fun, and they feel great when you hit it out of the center of the racket. It feels great. Right. It's actually hard to do that though if you're playing against someone with a modern racket that's spinning the ball and that. But did you I'm interested now because when we introduce kids to tennis now, like they're using like a 21 or 23 inch aluminium racket, and then they progress to graphite. Like they're using modified balls like red balls, and it's a lot slower through the air. Like, did you have junior rackets then, or was it always just the standard adult size racket when you first started having to play tennis?
There were junior rackets, but not anything like today, the short ones. They were all a standard racket, but they were much lighter, and they called them a junior racket. But I guess I'm a bit like Federer. I think the smaller the head, the better, really. I think you get a lot more feel out of it. You work the ball, and I think I don't know whether I don't think I could see myself playing with one of those larger heads today. I think the smaller head is better, and I think it's probably better for a young person to learn with it too. And I think one of the things I learned tremendously was a lot of people today, I think, play their opponent instead of playing the ball. we should know our opponent's weaknesses. And I always found, I think that's what I always went back to, was to play the ball, not my opponent. I knew my opponent's weaknesses over the period of years. You played them quite a few times. You knew how to play them. And I think that's going back to that determination and concentration. You could pin that point of where you were going to hit the ball at. And that kept you very focused, kept you committed, kept you lining up, playing the ball, not your opponent.
Yeah. Yeah, and so with the transition from wooden rackets to sort of aluminium or graphite, so one of the things that I've noticed when I have played with a wooden racket is the serve feels really good, the volleying feels really good, just like probably any other racket. But then when you're trying to get any sort of top spin on the ball, it's really hard. That's why I guess a lot of players sliced or hit the forehand really flat. So I guess what that translated to really early on was that a serve volley or chip charge sort of style was really good because your serve feels good, your volleys feel great, but it's hard to hit passing shots. And then when the aluminium and the graphite rackets came in, it then allowed, I guess, a little bit more spin on the ground strokes and that. Did you notice, I guess, the shift in the way the game started to be played? Was it quite noticeable back then, or did you not notice it as much in terms of how the equipment, the way the game
You
was?
noticed it particularly with the rackets. I think with the aluminium racket, uh, it was, you got a lot more feel. I
Yeah,
remember a few years later, I went to a graphite and balls kept going because I didn't have a lot of top spin. But you started to learn a bit how to come up over the ball a bit more, hold the ball a bit longer. There was a difference because with the wooden rackets, it was, you could serve, volley, chip, go forward, but you were much flatter. And I think these rackets today are beautiful. So, but I'd love to see today a bit more of the all-round game, because I remember I played in the French final one year and I played Chris Evert Lloyd and I was down and I thought, and I'd beat a lot of the European girls and I was seated above her because I was getting to the end of my career and she was just coming in, very good on clay courts. And I remember I thought, if I don't change something, I'm going to lose. And I was down a set in 5-1. And I thought, I changed. So I serve volleyed. And I think she got such a shock. I finished up winning 6-1 in the third. And I've never forgotten that, because even on clay, you can pick your balls, you can still volley and finish them off. And I'd love to see the all-round game coming back in with young people, because I really believe you've got to learn to volley when you're very young. Otherwise, you'll fear the net. So if you learn that at a very early age, which I did at about 8 or 9, I used to love to go in and charge in, and it become a part of me, and to play with the men and to play doubles with them, and to do that. And I think it brought a much more all-round skill game, which you would love to see to come back in the women's tennis, particularly today.
Yeah, that's it. It's a really good point. And there's I'm not sure whether there's a guy called Craig O'Shaughnessy who's worked in the Djokovic team a fair bit over the years, and he's done all the statistics on tennis. He's done 20,000 matches on how people are playing. And what's actually quite interesting about that is that it looks like the game has become a lot more baseline orientated.
Yeah.
However, the win rate at the net is still really high. So I think it's something like the pro level. Once a player gets to the net, it's still like a 65-70% win rate on average. It looks like it just you need to be a little bit more selective. Like Nadal actually has, well, at one point in his career, when Craig was doing the stats, might have been sort of 7 or 8 years ago now. Like Nadal actually had the highest percentage of points won at the net. Above 90.
Particularly on grass, I think,
Yeah,
so much easier, and yeah.
definitely. And like he did because he was just waiting for the right time to come in. He's put all away. But no, it's a good point. I know it is something that everyone enjoys, it when there's a bit of an all court style, a little bit more net play, makes the game more exciting. So just I guess just shifting a little bit to because there'll be some younger players, I guess, that'll be watching replays and things like that of this. Do you have any advice that you'd give to younger players in terms of like what are the qualities that you think they should develop? Yeah, anything that you've learned or advice you'd like to give to younger up and coming players?
I think it's to have a good coach, um, and have a good style, uh, and to listen. And I think that is important, uh, to get out and to practice, but I think also to do other sports in those really early years. Keep yourself not getting so intense. Hey, I'm going to be a champion from the age of 8, 9, 10. I played a lot of sports. I still did a lot of things right, really through until the age of 15. And then I went to Melbourne to further my tennis because I couldn't go any further. But I think if you show a lot of promise at an early age, enjoy it. Don't get so competitive that it's just controlling your life. And I think that's where parents have got to come in and do that. And I think sometimes parents want it more than their children. And I think you've got to allow them to have a life and to do other things and to enjoy it, because nobody pushed. I'd go and play when I wanted to play, or and it got to the stage I'd go every afternoon after school because I wanted to do it. It wasn't anybody pushing me. My parents didn't push me. They didn't even go and watch me play. Um, so it was something I wanted to do. And after I finished tennis, I did coach for quite some time. And I found the parents were more enthusiastic than the young children themselves. And I felt you're not allowing them to have a normal life. If they want to play cricket, let them play cricket. They'll find what the one, particularly if they're a good athlete. And I was a very good athlete, and I could have gone in 2 or 3 areas, and probably been a champion. So I think that's it. And I think to learn that what I said earlier, uh, to play the ball. I think a lot of people are always thinking about, and you see them today with the charts and looking at your opponent and and looking at your coach up there. And I'm thinking, we never had any of that. We had to think for ourselves, and we had to work it out for ourselves. We had to work out what was their weakness. And I think particularly when things start to go wrong, you see today so many players don't have a second game to fall back onto. If you lost your backhand, hey, you'd start to chip, you'd be aggressive until you got your confidence or something back in it. And I remember with Billie Jean King and we both had a weakness on our forehand. And I remember a coach in America saying to me, Margaret, you come out and spend a few weeks with me, because we knew how to break that with one another. We knew how to, that pressure on that side for that to collapse a bit. And I always remember going out and working for a few weeks on my forehand and just changing my stroke a little bit. I hardly lost to her after that. But she never did anything about hers, but I did something about mine. And, we had some great battles because everybody wanted a Court King final. But I found how when I did something about it, changed it, where there was a little bit of weakness. I see that a little bit with Coco, that's been on her forehand side there. You keep working on that, and it can become your strength. A little bit like your weakness can become your strength. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really great example of, I guess, being open to it as well, because there are, I guess, players once they get to a certain level can become a bit more closed off, and maybe not as
Yeah.
willing to develop their games, because what's worked for them has worked pretty well to get to a pro level. But that's a really good example. But I also like the simplicity of what you're talking about there in terms of like just playing the ball. Like there's so many distractions. I think now when you look at pro players, they've got media, they've got contracts, there's just noise everywhere. And if you can get out on the court and just focus on the ball, then I'm sure you can.
Focus on the ball and play your own game where your
Yeah,
real strength is. And I
yeah,
knew my strength was my volley, my aggression, my smash, that area particularly. So I was always looking to set it up that I could go forward.
yeah,
And, and I think, when you're in a tight place, you think, well, I'm just going to play my own game. And you don't get tentative, you don't pull off. No, you keep that aggressive side going. I think that's important. You always have something to fall back on.
yeah, yeah. That's good. And it sounds like from a parent perspective, that was one of the questions I did have was around how what kind of role your parents plays, because we've found that it does, the parents make a huge difference to from a commitment perspective, I guess. If parents are always getting their kids to training and travel and that, it makes a good difference to the level of play they get to. But the parents obviously have a much bigger impact on what type of person the child becomes, and how much they enjoy the game. And so yeah, I'd be interested to hear, because you love the game and that was first and foremost why you did so well. What sort of, did you feel any parental pressure, or your parents just supportive, loving parents? Like, what was sort of your relationship?
I was the youngest of four, and my mum didn't want me to play because she didn't want me to go away, because I had to leave home when I was 15.
Yeah,
And I knew unless I left home and went to Melbourne, but I then went and I had good families there who I went and stayed with and lived with in those years. But no, she wasn't interested in the tennis side of it all. And my dad didn't know anything about it very much. They were just working parents, and my mum didn't work, but my dad did. And there was actually alcohol in our home. So my escape was to the outdoors, because there was a lot of arguments and that there. And I think that's why I love sport. And I go across to my coach and his wife. They didn't have any children. So I was a bit like a daughter there. And he said, come on, we'll go and have a hit. And just to earn to pay for my lessons and things, I worked in the kiosk on a weekend. I painted net posts. I marked the tennis courts back then, the grass courts. So, I did something to just tennis was a part of my life and helping out. But I had to earn. I hate to work and to do things. It just wasn't given to me on a platter. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. That's some really good insights there. What we might do, if anyone's on the call that would like to ask a question, you can do so in the chat section. Just while, if anyone wants to think about something, additional question I had for you was, what would be your favorite tennis memory or proudest achievement?
Probably the year I won the Grand Slam, because I had won 3 out of the 4 twice before. It's not easy to win the Grand Slam all in 1 year, because everything had to be at a peak of fitness, had to be right. I remember 1 year I'd won 3 out of the 4, and then I had the flu in one of the Grand Slams, and I lost. And it was normally where I lost was the French or Wimbledon. And everything just had to be, you had to just know in yourself, yeah. And I think that year of 1970, I knew it was the year I was going to somehow win it. And I remember in the quarterfinal of Wimbledon, I'd slipped and torn the ligaments of the ankle. And so I thought, well, this is it. But I got through that match. And then a Harley Street specialist said, pull out of the doubles and the mixed. He said, if I put an injection in, it will last 2.5 hours. So you're going to win your match within 2.5 hours. And you won't feel it. You won't do any more damage to it. So I got through my semis pretty good. And then I had to play Billie Jean King in the final. And that match back then, we didn't have tiebreakers in 1970. And it went 11, 12, 14. It went 11, 9, 14, 12 in 2 sets. If it had gone to a third set, I would have lost it, because it went for 2.5 hours. So I always remember that match. It was like being on the centre court of Wimbledon and you couldn't hear a pin drop. It was electrifying. And I don't think it's ever a match she'll forget or I'll forget. because it could have gone either way.
That's that's what a recovery from an injury to that result and end up winning
and then I went on to the US. I somehow felt I was going to, because that was the fourth number 4. But then I was in the final there, and I'd never lost to Rosie McCasells back then. Billie Jean had gone out, Chris Evert had gone out, and I dropped a set on her, and I finished up winning it. I think you get to that. I think even Dokovic got to the 4th and didn't win at one stage. So it's not easy, I can tell you that, not to win all 4 in 1 year.
Yeah. That's absolutely. It's an understatement there. Not many people have been able to do that in history. So we've got a couple of questions coming in. So the first one is from Cigar. So I would like to ask for any advice for a coach to work on or remember every time I get on court to help a player. So any advice for a coach who's working with young up and coming players?
I think the thing is not always, you compliment, but you know their weaknesses, and it's important to help them to overcome their weaknesses, but to encourage them. I think it's important not to put down. Tell them, what you could see for the future. I think, coaches, you're like a mentor. You'll become like a father, or if you're a woman, you become like a mother. And you've got to always remember, some children don't have a very good home life. And so you can make them or break them, even if they don't go on in life to be a champion, but they go on in life to be a good person. And I think sport is a wonderful game to put disciplines, commitment, focus into their life for their future, whether they go on and study or they go on and work somewhere, but it always puts something into them. And I feel a coach has such an important role to help that person or that child. You can often know that child, whether they're going through stuff or not in their own life personally. And I think it's having that understanding, say, I can help this young person. You may have become an ex-president or a prime minister. You don't know. It's what you, as a coach, you're a very, very important person in a person's life, because I saw all the coaches I had, they were like dads to me. I always honored them after and in my career and after my career, how much they put into my life as a human being, because I didn't believe in myself. I had an inferiority complex. I wasn't very good at school. All I was good at was really sport. But my coaches just blessed me. Frank Sedgman's still alive. When I see him, I'm so grateful for what he and his wife put into my life.
Yeah, it's a really, really good message there, and how big a role the coach plays beyond teaching someone a forehand or a backhand. So building character, and it sounds like in your case, building up your self-confidence.
That's right.
Which is priceless. So, all right, we've got one last question here from Andre. So, or maybe one more. We got what's your advice for club amateur players to help them improve?
Well, amateur players, I mean, to me, you've got to be amateur before you become a pro. And I mean, from my amateur days, there was no difference. I guess today you've got to break into the top, from the satellites. But I think amateur is just a young player or somebody wanting to go on the circuit and play the satellites. Is that what he's saying?
Oh yeah, actually, I think what my interpretation of this question is, what's your advice for like a club player? They have used amateur.
Okay.
Amateurs use probably differently now, but just someone who's playing recreationally. How would they improve?
How do you improve? Well, I think, if you can afford to get a coach, have some lessons. I think you always got to practice. You want to get better. You got to, at least play 2 or 3 times a week. and practice. It depends what age you are. If you're doing it as a social sport, I think tennis is a wonderful game because you can play right up until you're 80 or more, and just to get out and to have exercise. And hey, I think just keep thinking, well, even as I get older, I want to improve. And I think that's a little bit of a vision or a goal. And it keeps you looking at something, whether you go to gym or whether you play tennis or whatever you do. But if you want to improve your strokes, have a few lessons.
Yeah, great advice there. That's really good. And we'll just go on to the last question from Vaughan here. So, what's your view on the future of tennis teams events such as Fed Cup and Davis Cup?
Well, I look at it. I played Fed Cup, and I loved it. I love representing my nation. I never lost a match in Fed Cup, and I think today they've watered it down a lot. I think it should have been still so important. They should have put a great emphasis on the Davis Cup and the Federation Cup, and now they have so many cups. I think it was an honour to get into the Federation Cup. I know with many of the guys, exactly the same with the Davis Cup, but now there's such big money in the game, and the money has taken over. But I think it should always, probably wish they had have kept that. Hey, what an honour to play in the Olympics or to play Davis Cup to represent your nation. I think the money has become so big that it's all about that instead of about representing a nation. And I think that's a bit sad. If I see that today, I think that about the game.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of changes in that that space over the last couple of years. So I guess Margaret, we're gonna wrap it up there, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with again a lot of our audiences, players, parents, coaches, people who are really passionate about the game and love it. And yeah, so just wanted some incredible insights tonight, I guess, from everything on physical training, mental training, your approach to sort of playing and improving. I think there's been a lot of really good things. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and love to do it again at some point in the future.
Thanks, Ryan. I hope I helped some people, and I think that's what it's all about. I think there was some little golden nuggets in there that you can take hold of and help you, whether it's in your tennis or in your life. I think it's important.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great having you on here.
Yeah, thank you so much.